everybody, Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, and this week's contract tip has to do with the commission instructions that is the contract for the commission between the listing broker and the selling broker, and the form that the closing attorney needs so that the closing attorney knows what commission to put on the closing statement for which broker. So in general, well, let me just go over the forms and then we'll talk in general. So on the GAR form, it is GAR form F32, Instructions to Closing Attorney. And this is the form that you fill out. Well, okay, I am going to start in the general. Let's think about it. Where does the commission start? The commission starts from the seller. The seller is the one that initiates all the commission in a real estate transaction. So where is this all contracted for and spelled out on paper? The answer is in the listing agreement. So the seller agrees to pay the listing broker the total amount of commission for that sale, for when that property closes, and when that transaction closes, the seller pays the listing broker the total amount of commission. Then in the listing agreement, it has a place where the seller and the listing broker agree that the listing broker will share a certain part of the commission with a selling broker, should that selling broker be the procuring cause of sale for that transaction. Again, that is all spelled out in the listing agreement. Any other modifications or changes or additions or contingencies to that commission need to be written out and agreed upon between the seller and the listing broker. For example, what is to happen if there is not another broker or another agent involved in the transaction? Is there any difference in commission that the seller will pay the listing broker? What is to happen if the selling broker doesn't accompany the buyer to the first showing? All of those kinds of things that you see advertised in MLS that really needs to be agreed upon between the seller and the listing broker and spelled out and signed in the listing agreement. So that's where all the commission begins. Then at closing, a property closes, the transaction closes, and all the commission goes from the seller to the listing broker, and then the listing broker is the entity or the party that pays the selling broker the commission. So that is all contracted for in a separate form called Instructions to Closing Attorney in the GAR form package and Commission Acknowledgement in the RE forms package. So we'll get to MLS in a minute. But basically, the seller does not pay the buyer's brokerage commission. That commission comes from the listing broker. So you guys, you selling brokers especially, y'all need to fill out these commission instructions and get it in writing how much money the selling broker is going to make should they be the procuring cause of sale for a transaction that is listed by a listing broker and listed in the MLS service. Now, just since we're kind of on this topic, where is it so the commission is between the brokerages. It doesn't have anything to do with the actual buyer or the seller. Now, just think about it. You as the agent, where is the contract where it talks about you as the agent getting paid commission? It's not in the Instructions to Closing Attorney. It's not in the purchase and sale agreement. It is, and it's not in the buyer brokerage or in the listing agreement. It is in your independent contractor agreement that you sign with your broker. That's where it's all written out, and that's the contract for how you get paid your commission. All the other commission coming from the public goes to the actual brokerage. So it's very important, especially you selling agents, to complete the Instructions to Closing Attorney and make sure that you get that signed off by the listing broker because that's where you contract for payment. So in the GAR form, it is GAR form F32, Instructions to Closing Attorney. And basically you put in the buyer's name and the seller's name, and it has for the purchase and sale agreement dated. Now, you'll notice it doesn't reference a binding agreement date. You selling agents, y'all should prepare this and send this at the same time you send an offer. Now, it's not part of the offer because the offer is to be signed by the public seller and the public buyer. But you should still prepare it and send it in 2 separate packages. One package goes to the listing agent that the listing agent can then present to the seller. The other package or attachment is just the commission instructions that go between you guys as agents, as affiliated licensees with your brokers. But that's why it references a purchase sale agreement dated, not necessarily a binding agreement date. And then it has the property address. And then it says, the undersigned listing broker and selling broker hereby confirm that the real estate commissions to which they will be entitled upon closing of the above referenced transaction and direct the closing attorney to pay these amounts at closing from the sale proceeds. Then it has paragraph 1, commissions paid by seller. And under 1, it has an A and a B. Commissions paid by seller. The total real estate commission to be paid by the seller in this transaction is, and then you either put a percentage of the purchase price or you can put a flat fee. Then paragraph 1B says the listing broker agrees to share the commission with the selling broker by paying the selling broker the following, and it's a percentage of the sale price or a flat fee. So when you're looking at this form, paragraph 1A and B, the percentage or the flat fee number in paragraph 1A must be larger than the amount in B, because the amount in A is the total commission that the seller agrees to pay the listing broker, and then the amount in B is the percentage or the flat fee that the listing broker pays the selling broker. So if those two numbers are the same, that means the listing broker is not getting paid for this transaction. So again, commissions paid by the seller. The A is the total commission, and then B is the part listing brokers paying selling broker, should be a lower number. And then paragraph 2 is commissions paid by buyer. If there's a situation in the transaction where the buyer is actually paying commission too, for example, if the buyer is paying commission based on the buyer brokerage agreement, then that goes in paragraph 2, commissions paid by buyer. In addition to the seller's total commission, the real estate commission to be paid by the buyer in this transaction is set forth below. And then it has buyer's total commission, and then the selling broker agrees to share the commission with the listing broker. So it's just backwards. But again, paragraph 2A should be a larger number than paragraph 2B. Then it has general terms, and it says neither broker shall have claim for commission against the other broker if it doesn't close. And paragraph 3B under general just says notwithstanding the above, unless otherwise specifically provided for herein, the signing the agreement doesn't waive or limit the rights of the selling broker or listing broker to challenge after closing either the entitlement to or the amount of commission paid or not paid. What that means is if there's any discrepancy over the commission amounts, that is not a reason to hold up closing. The parties still close, and then the brokers deal with any commission disputes after closing. Then on the next page of the GAR Commission instructions to closing attorney, it says further directions to the closing attorney. And this is where if either of the broker is giving a rebate to one of the parties, a commission rebate, or purchasing something from their commission for one of the parties, for example, a home warranty or so forth or so on, this is where all of those fees are and rebates are identified. And again, under paragraph 4, further directions to closing attorney, and it's broken out into listing broker and selling broker. Listing broker, selling broker, and their respective affiliated licensees hereby direct the closing attorney to disclose on the settlement statement for the above referenced transaction the following referral fees and rebates they have or will be paid or have received or will receive in said transaction. And then that's where you spell out the fees and the rebates. Then there is a small space for the special stipulations. And then the signature on this page, again, is the affiliated licensee of the listing broker and the affiliated licensee of the selling broker. The actual public, the buyer and the seller, do not sign this, as it's just a contract between the brokers. The RE forms document is RE 115 Commission Acknowledgement, and it is conceptually the same ideas. You fill in a date and you identify the buyer and the seller and the property and the date of the offer, And then again, it says, whereas the seller has agreed per the terms of a separate listing brokerage agreement to pay a real estate commission to the undersigned seller's broker, and then seller's broker agrees per the terms of the listing agreement. So it references anything that was in the listing agreement, shall share the commission with the undersigned buyer's broker. And then the same thing, you fill out what the seller's broker gets and what the buyer's broker gets. Now in the RE forms, it is a little bit different. This is the total commission, the gross commission going to the seller's broker and to the buyer's broker. So it's not like that one so in this one, the numbers could be the same. And then it has additional credits and debits for the closing attorney to put on the settlement statement, again, regarding any rebates, referral fees, so forth and so on. So that is all spelled out, as well as any funds to be dispersed to a company. For example, seller to pay such and such company at closing this amount. That would go on on the commission acknowledgement for the instructions, so that the closing attorney knows how to prepare the closing statement. And again, this form is signed by the selling broker, by the listing broker, and the buyer's broker. Now, what that means, so that is where you actually get signatures to contract for the commission. So what happens if you don't have that? Well, in general, an article from Seth Weissman states that a property that we are a co-op, we share commissions because we cooperate, the brokerages cooperate with one another. And listing in an MLS service does constitute a contractual offer to cooperate with all the members of that MLS service and to pay them a specified commission if they are the procuring cause of sale. But if a property is not listed in an MLS service, then there is no, if a property is not listed in MLS, for example, a for sale by owner, or for example, new construction that is not yet required to be listed in MLS, which is basically up until the point of drywall. If it's not in the MLS service, then the financial basis for a listing broker to pay a selling broker must be agreed upon in a separate contract, which would be what we just talked about. So if a property is not in MLS, there's no guarantee that there's no agreement that the listing broker is required to pay the selling broker a commission without something in writing. So a couple things. If a seller has signed a listing agreement with a broker and the broker is a member of an MLS service and the property is in a compulsory area of that MLS service, there is still that is still the contractual offer to cooperate with members of the MLS service. In this fast market, even though it's not, they're selling rather quickly, that would govern that. But regardless of that, you guys don't leave it up to that. Get your commission in writing. Get the contract signed between the brokerages. So again, you can use, if a property is not in the MLS service, you can use those two documents we talked about before, the instructions to closing attorney and the commission acknowledgement. GAR, the Georgia Association of Realtors, has another form, and it is Form F38, Co-op Commission Agreement, to be used prior to showing. This is a form, it has the same verbiage. It's not for a closing attorney because it doesn't have any of the fees or rebates, but this is a form just signed between the listing broker and the selling broker. And it says, you just identify the property, and it says, for and in consideration of $10 and other good and valuable consideration, the receipt and sufficiency of which is hereby acknowledged, the undersigned listing broker and selling broker hereby confirm the co-op commissions to which each will be entitled upon closing of the above referenced property. And then again, you put the commission paid by the seller and the commission paid by the buyer. And it says the listing broker agrees to share the commission paid by the seller with the selling broker by paying the selling broker the following: blank % of the purchase price or a flat fee. Commission paid by the buyer. The selling broker agrees to share the commission paid by a buyer with the listing broker by paying the listing broker the following. So again, this form is a little bit different, and it is designed to be used prior to showing, to make sure before you show a property, if it's not in an MLS service and there is no contractual offer to cooperate, that you do get a contract to cooperate and share the commission. So take a look at that form. And then just before we leave this topic, a couple of other issues. In the RE forms, the only commission form is that commission acknowledgement, which is RE Form 115. GAR has those two forms that I discussed. I'm sorry, there is another one in the RE forms. GAR also has a separate leasing commission confirmation agreement. So if you are an agent representing a tenant in a lease situation, you are going to want to use this form. The GAR form is F37, Leasing Commission Confirmation Agreement. Easy for me to say. And the RE forms also have a leasing commission agreement, and that is RE Form 125, Lease Commission Acknowledgement. And then the only other additional form that GAR has is CF16, and it is a Commercial Lease Commission Assumption Agreement. So you want to take a look at that if you deal in commercial leases. So again, just a brief tip about the commission instructions and how to get them signed and who signs them. And I hope this contract tip helped you out. Thank you so much for watching. Dana Sparks, broker of Maximum One Greater Atlanta Realtors, satisfying your needs with service, innovation, and education.